We're not doing that again, are we?
Okay.
That counts.
That counts. Okay. Are there any adoptions or changes to the agenda requested? Okay. Thank you. Chair, entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Bruno made a motion.
You ain't got much choice.
Yeah.
A second.
Ray still seconds it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sounds unanimous to me. Okay, now is the time for public comment. This is the time for any member of the public to address the Measure V Oversight Board on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the Measure V Oversight Board or staff to discuss issues brought forth under public comment. The board cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed on the next available agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on each agenda item. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there any public comment? Melissa, are there any on Zoom?
There are no public comment on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no public comment, we will close public comment and move on to business. Item number 1, minutes of the April 13, 2022 meeting with the recommendation that we receive and file those minutes. Has everyone had time to review the minutes? And if so, I'd entertain a motion to approve and receive and file those minutes.
So moved.
Bruno moved and
Second.
Ray Silva second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, motion carries. Okay, so would Kathy like to review the fiscal 21-22 Measure V budget with us?
Well,
Or would
certainly.
Alan?
Kathy would like Alan to do it.
Okay, well, so we have 2 sort of reports in here for you. Just our standard report from our finance system. So the first one you can see for 21-22, that's the last fiscal year. So that's the primary responsibility of this board, reviewing those expenditures. And then the second report is just the current year's budget. I think it has actuals maybe through the end of last month. Is that right?
That's through the end of this month, which I thought was a little strange.
Oh, the end of this.
So I guess it's up to.
Today.
Yeah, to date, basically. So, I mean, I don't think there's too much to go over from our perspective unless you have questions. I mean, it's, you know, we've kind of settled into a bit of a groove up until this point with, you know, revenue still continues to climb. You can see right at, well, almost, we're getting almost $3 million in revenue.
Awesome.
Our budget amount was just under 2.5, but you can see fiscal activity is over 2.8 there. So things have been going well in that regard. And then, you know, we're going to talk a little bit more later, but the big change in the future, of course, is the decision to use this funding primarily for debt financing. And so we did complete that transaction, about $14.7 million. And so for the next few years, don't expect to, we're going to basically be funding the sort of maintenance staff that we have, kind of our general stuff that you see in here, and then the debt itself. And then we expect, you know, a few years out, we'll be getting enough additional revenue that we'll be able to start doing some pay-as-you-go projects again with excess.
Question. You sound kind of scratchy first.
A little tiny bit, yeah.
COVID's making the
Glad
rounds.
you noticed.
Good observation, right?
The 14.7 million is consummated and it's
In the bank.
in the bank.
Awesome.
What kind of rate did we get on that?
You know, I knew I should have looked that up. I can look up in my email. It ended up sneaking up on us a tiny amount. I think we ended up with 3.3.
Not bad.
Still cheap.
So it's still looking really good right now.
Compared to what it is now.
So,
And what it's gonna be next year.
yeah.
Yeah, good job. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Now that we're, 7 years? Is that what we've done? 16 to now, right?
Well, I think it was passed in 16, but we started collecting in 17. So, yeah,
So
I think-
5 years. What's the average expenditure away from actual projects that on salaries and benefits and I was just adding up all this stuff here.
I would say roughly $500,000. Probably.
Well, there's 413. Let's see, this is 21, 22.
Yeah, that's the budgeted amount. You can see actual was 367 on just straight salary.
And then all of the other add-ons, the vacation and uniforms and PERS and workman's comp and all that stuff, if you add all that up, it gets into the $700,000, $800,000 range.
I don't think so.
Do we have an average yearly, year over year, what's going towards? Oh, and this isn't a critique, it isn't stirring it up or anything, but if we settle into a little niche like you're saying, that we're spending this much on our public works crew is what it is, basically.
Right.
Is that average should hold pretty steady, or if it bumps up, there should be a reason why. And I think the public should know that without Measure B, if I'm correct, there would be no public works department. It would be a skeleton.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have maybe a couple people.
So it's necessary to do that.
Yeah.
That's one of the questions I get from a lot of people. One of the comments is, oh, they're just going to spend it all on wages. And my response has been, well, if you want your roads repaired better than they have been in the
Right.
past, we need to have a crew to do it.
Well, I mean, something that I know I'm excited about, I know Addie is excited about, and the crew certainly is too, is, we've done a lot on the gravel streets or dirt streets for the chip seal, right? And, it's not perfect, but largely very successful. With this debt financing next year, the project put together, we expect to basically complete double chip seal on all of the gravel streets.
Awesome.
With that have, we're not doing every mile of it, but the eastern avenues where there's no houses out there,
Yeah.
we're not doing that. But the ones that really have houses is going to be done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we will. So my point here is we will be doing some grading work over time, but after next year, prepping for that work, we aren't going to be having a grading crew all year. And, we'll need to do a little touch-up stuff here and there, but what we want to do is then go buy our own chip sealing equipment and stuff like that and train our guys so that we can go maintain all of that stuff. And then we're starting to get into actual, public works type of work that's meaningful and makes an impact.
Do you have a cost per mile on the chip seal?
Well, it all depends on how much we do. I mean, the first year we did a mile and spent about $100,000 a mile. We did 5 miles last year and we spent what, 375,000, 400,000. So a little bit less,
Put in 10 miles for 912,000.
just under $1 million. So, some of it kind of depends.
So it's
but
roughly
it's roughly
100,000 a mile.
100,000.
But that doesn't include the crew prepping?
No.
Okay, so that's kind of what I'm getting at. As opposed to what we're doing, like what we did out on Second Street, that was less than a mile, it was over $1 million.
Yeah. Right.
So
Absolutely.
it's paving, the full,
Yeah.
very,
Figure 1.2 million a mile.
yeah, that's about right. I've been around here for almost 50 years. In fact, one of the sewer jobs I worked on was putting the sewers up behind the old Thrifties, which is now the Venice Clinic there. Those streets back up in there have never looked so good. I drove through there the other day and it never.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Addie, but I think you and Dave did a little bit of a calculation that probably the work that we did saved us at least another $100,000 a mile in
Yes.
prepping for the chip seal if we would have contracted it out.
So part of that cost for the salaries is, I think you guys are doing a good job. I mean, there's always ways to pick and poke, but which brings me back to a point that I've tried to make before, is that the chip seal, there's not a lot of money spent on engineering. According to the city engineer, I asked him what they did with the grading and with the drainage. And he said, oh, we just kind of walked along and did, we'll do this here and we'll do that there and we'll direct this water here. That was my point about paving without doing all the gutter and curb stop work on the sides, that we could do so much more. That's council's decision. My decision would be more asphalt flying and less concrete. For example, if we picked the 2nd Street project, I'm guessing, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, maybe Addie knows, but I'm guessing a third of that job at least was in concrete, placing concrete.
I can get that for you on the bid schedule if you'd like.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter because that's council's decision to do it. It wouldn't be my decision unless it's necessary. Most roads don't have edging or curb and gutter. My original idea or thought on Measure V was for the asphalt to hit the roads. I guess we're being picky about which ones we're actually design engineering. We're putting gutters and flow lines, permanent no flow lines, and edging, curbing on the sides. The terminology is escaping me right now. What do they call those little curves down the side?
Most strips.
Most strips. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some, I think, jump in, Addie, because you know more of the details than me, but I think the work that we did this last year on chip sealing, there was more drainage work that was done. You know, initially
Yes.
we did the stuff that was easy and didn't require as much. Took more drainage work. Now, where we can get away with it, we've been doing less. For example, part of the debt financing project will be the one section we're gonna do the tree streets over here. There's quite a bit of drainage
Yeah.
problems, and so
Bad flooding.
it's gonna take more work, but you know, we sat around the table and it's like, oh, well, we gotta figure out the drainage. That's gonna be a mess. So for years, the city just didn't do anything because they didn't figure out the drainage. Just like, okay, we gotta just figure it out, you know, so it's gonna be more
Always
expensive.
been a problem.
Yeah.
I used to live in there.
The tree streets are kind of like in your area where people put the curb drive in to make it a less of a bump to go into their
Encroachment.
driveway.
Yeah.
And the water would have to go around it, so it started eating up on the road. People filled in the culverts in the tree streets where it's obvious the culvert stops and now there's a driveway to go put your car in. Well,
Yeah.
thanks a lot. So,
Anytime you do any work in that area, there should be an encroachment permit. You know, I always had to pull them as a contractor. In fact, I did my own. The roll curb in my area was pretty abrupt. I was knocking my front ends out of line. My wife forgot about it and hit it too many times. And so I cut it out and made one that was less abrupt and most people don't do that, but that requires an encroachment permit, cutting out the curb and redoing the whole thing. But that's an item that you might want to look at, that people that do things like that, they're on city property doing work, they should have a permit or they shouldn't be doing
Yeah,
it.
I mean, we had a number of problems on this project up here where people just started going out and doing their own stuff. And, well, you probably heard about the second MODOK where the guy was drilling the holes. And
No, but that's, while we're on the subject, as it turns out, my son worked for a company that, and did that, ran that job. Is that a conflict of interest? No, there was no communication or anything. I did get a bird's eye view of the job though. I went out there a couple of times and
That's good.
sure had good things to say about you, I'll tell you that. We agreed.
there's a lot of us that agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, I think and I'll stop, but the idea that I was getting at is that doing the chip seal, doing the grading and the chip seal, and taking a chance on the drainage and who you screw over when you realign waterways it's risky. We haven't had much of a winter since chip seal projects got going, and we'll find out what happens when it rains and what gets wiped out. But I would like to see more of that type of approach as far as paving roads without spending all the money on concrete. This is just a suggestion and a way to get more bang for the buck, if it's possible. I've questioned Dave about it before, and he says, well, you have to have parameters for your asphalt. And I said, well, won't the state be surprised? And won't the county be surprised there's not most strips or curbs except for downtown areas wherever you look? They're just not. I think it looks nice. I think it's great. But for example, in the Meadowbrook area, I broke it down. There was out of a $1.2 or $3 million job, there was probably between the demolition of the existing curb and the replacement, $600,000. Almost half of the cost of that project had to do with concrete, not fixing the roads. Anyways, I'll end it there, and the council is probably going to review this and they can hear me. I don't think we need a motion or anything like that to do with that, but maybe somebody else has a comment on it.
Hey, Ray, are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes.
So back to one of your original questions on the Public Works Department. One of the things that we look at is how we leverage the Public Works Department. You guys touched on it. Every project that we do virtually, Public Works is leveraged and provides enormous value to the project. The chip seal is an easy example. Figure it this way: the contractor on the chip seal project, this last 5 miles, was in and out of here in around 8 days. In order to grade and prep that job, the contractor would have probably, and that was how much was the last chip seal job, Adeline? Do you remember?
335,000. The one previous to this 10 mile?
Yeah, or yeah, this last one. So, yeah. So what I'm saying is the ratio is like 3 to 1. It takes 3 times as long to prep as it does to chip seal. So it's going to be roughly, if it's a $300,000 chip seal job, it's going to be $900,000 for the contractor extra to grade it and prep it. It's just like painting a house, right? The easiest thing to do is shoot the paint on it if you know what you're doing. So I figured that the Public Works Department just on the chip seal jobs alone have saved us over $2 million, if not more. And then you get on things like Second and MODOC, where there are additional signage and chevrons and things that need to be put up that, again, we have Public Works do that. And, each one of those things is $1,000 to $1,500 just to talk about it with Granite. And, we use Public Works to do a lot of different things like that. And they're involved on almost every project at some degree, whether, like right now we're doing crack sealing. I mean, crack sealing is extraordinarily expensive to pay prevailing wages for a contractor to come in and do that. And then to address your comments about the mow strips and the curbs and gutters, the question there is simple. How long do you want the street to last? Because as soon as the water intrusion starts to degrade the edges of the street where you put your mow strips, then the street starts to degrade at an accelerated fashion. So like in the case of Meadowbrook, where we put curbs and gutters in, we're not putting curbs and gutters in because we want to implement drainage per se. Everything we do, our entire motivation on Measure B monies that are spent are to put down asphalt that will last 30 years. Okay, if you don't put the concrete down, it's not going to last that long. Why? Because the edges of the roadway, especially in a city where you have garbage service and everything else, you can talk about the county, but the level of service and the number of traffic vehicles you have traveling off the edge of those roadways is a fraction of what it is on, say, Second MODOC with traffic. So the edges of the roadway just get tore up, and the street just get tore up so much faster that your useful life goes downhill at an accelerated pace. So, you spend $1 million on a street, and it lasts, and it starts going downhill in 5 years. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. So I appreciate where you're coming from, but it's really a question of how long do you want the street to last? And putting those provisions in today is going to be cheaper than trying to deal with it in 10 or 15 years from now. And then the last thing I wanted to comment on is we are extraordinarily careful on any of the projects when it comes to grading and drainage. Measure V projects are not drainage projects. We don't put in new drainage with them. And we don't do that for a lot of reasons. And we don't change road slopes, quite frankly, for a lot of reasons because of historical drainage patterns. Once we start changing those historical drainage patterns, we do incur liability. And even though we don't change them, and even though we're very aware and we take before and after photographs, after every project, we get somebody tells us that we flooded their home. We changed the whole grade of the roadway and we flooded their home. So we understand that and we know that and we address it on an ongoing basis. So I wanted you to, the committee, to be very aware that we don't go into these projects changing drainage and changing flow patterns. That is not the intent of the project. That would have to be a much more regional study and it would be a much, much bigger job. So we keep basically the elevations, the roadway and the historical drainages and the same pattern before and after. If we can take care of ponding and puddling, we do. But major drainage patterns are not changed. So I wanted to kind of make sure that we understood all those things and just be able to respond to your concerns. Whether you agree or disagree, I understand and appreciate it, but that's kind of the, I want to at least share our philosophy of where we were coming from. So you understood there is a method.
I think, as a contractor, I think the most strips are great. You get something solid to pave up against when you're coming out of a driveway. Would you agree if I said that in excess of 90% of the roads in this county, public roads, don't have most strips or curb and gutter? Would you agree?
It doesn't really matter. You're sure? Oh yeah,
Okay.
of course.
Okay.
But that
So
doesn't make it right.
when you present these things to the council and they make a decision on whether or not to go with them, do you present them with an option to go with all of this, with the concrete work, or go without it, or just present it as this is what I think needs to be done and they go ahead and approve it?
We usually present it as a design of what we believe is the best project and the best quality of a project for the city. I think that's what the city has hired us to do. I'm sure that there's enough people around that table, and in particular, Mayor Sluten, who've been in construction, that if they had a concern or they wanted to ask those questions, they certainly could and would. But we always present what we think is the most cost-effective but longest lasting project that we can put out there.
Okay, like I said, it's not a critique. It's more of a suggestion. But I think the chip seal stuff that you've done is what an amazing transformation driving up in those streets. I remember putting the sewers up through the streets behind the old Adventist, Crawford, and all those. They've always been a mess, and the soil up there is awful. It's expansive type of soil, and we'll see how it holds up. But I think you did great with the money. In fact, compared to, I've been to a lot of the bid openings and I've watched how you guys have administered. I think you've done a great job administering the money, contracts, staying within budgets. But I do have a question out in the park. That money that was basically PG&E money on that $7 or $8 million. No,
CDBG, federal funds.
Federal funds. There was a grant for that. PG&E money that they.
Well, there was very little PG&E. PG&E funded the design.
Yeah.
You got the PG&E settlement that was supposed to go towards that.
How much was that?
14 million. But we got the opportunity to get it covered by state funds instead. So that's what we did.
I was under the impression it was the money went from PG&E to the state and then the state distributed it to the municipality.
It came directly to us.
Okay, so what did we do with the money? The 14
The PG&E money?
Yeah.
But we still have some.
Oh, for a rainy day. Okay.
Well, no, I mean, those funds are being focused on what we view as, projects that are making a long-term impact, like, for example, the sports complex project that we're working on. Infrastructure to get the airport project going, those type of things is what the PG money.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting into the bushes here. Anyways, Dave, I'm not critiquing, just, I think council should have an option. What could we do? Could we do an extra 30% more paving if we didn't do these things? Should we do these things like on Emory? I think you needed to. On Second Street, I mean, I'm not the decision maker. Would I have gone with the most strips? If I were in a position to decide, I don't think I would have. But the council is aware of all these choices, and they're making those choices. So, okay, thanks.
Melissa, do we have any? Oh, I'm sorry, Bruno has a.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, at least from my personal experience, because at one point in time, we figured out that my road is public, which the previous owner of my house was paying for the road to be graded, and the water company was paying for the road to be graded. And so finally, for the first time, I'm suspecting, the city graded, and I got to see it in action firsthand, the amount of tree trimming, rock removal, and everything else that occurred prior to grading the road and then grading the road. I've never seen my road look so good. And the same thing happened in the avenues and behind Foods, et cetera, in the clinic. Those roads never looked so good because the prep, and I think it took them 3 to 4 months, because that's what I was told I needed to wait for my road to finally get touched. But that took 3 to 4 months of prepping, which changes the complete look and feel that something actually happened to not just the road, but the entire surrounding of the community.
And that's here. It's a good point to make, that these wages that I was talking about.
Exactly.
Well, it gives you more firepower when people ask you questions and you say, well, how do you think those streets got graded before they were chip sealed? That's the type of thing people need to understand.
Yeah.
Not only do you have a public works department that's available to do things that need to be done, like we had a tree slowly leaning over Highlands Harbor. Every day I drove by, it was a little further. Am I imagining something? No, it wasn't. That tree, a pine tree, was slowly going down. That public works crew jumped on it and got it out of there. You don't have the people available, you can't do things like that. So,
but that's exactly why I bring it up. I think the salaries, the amounts that it is a force exponent or something of sorts to what else is being done with the funds from Measure V. They do amazing work. They're doing their best. Now I see them patching holes and things like that now that they're done with all the other stuff that they were working on. So it's continuous all year. I appreciate the work that's being done and the fact that you're doing the rest of the dirt roads or gravel roads. It changes everything. I do have one issue that I have seen in the new roads, and that's in the avenues. And I don't know if I sent you an email to that, but I at least wanted to bring it to Measure V, where before there was no need for stop signs or yield signs because everyone was going slow because it's a mogul run of a dirt road. But now you have these cross streets with chip seal on both sides going through an intersection, and some people are just driving them a little too fast without recognizing that one road should have the priority, like 32nd has the priority, or maybe Phillips has the priority at 32nd, should slow down when they cross that has stop signs. But the other roads that now have been resolved potentially create problems. And when I was going down Phillips, Gardner, whatever it is, I even noticed that the roads coming on like 29th or 28th also don't have a stop sign going onto those roads. And I don't know if that's something that's planned to be installed or if it was never installed and I just never noticed before. But just wanted to at least put it out there for this conversation, since I think it has to do with the road maintenance.
Good point.
We've done some additional ones. I think there's some priority ones that need to be done, but there's probably a lot actually that need to be added. So,
Dave, do you want to speak on that? What we talked about this?
Well, I think I think that's why we have the traffic safety committee, which will probably get re-upped now that we have a competent public works director. And those are probably the things that we would bring up the traffic safety committee. I think Andrew's on that committee. I think that we also have an existing signage study, don't we, Adeline?
Yes.
That we did one.
That we need to look at. You know, I personally haven't reviewed that signage study. There wasn't really a great need for now. Am I missing anything from our conversation?
No.
Well, I mean, the point is, we know we need to add some more
Yeah.
signs.
And in addition, even though I know this area, I was like, is this 29th? Is this 20? Like, I wasn't sure because there's also no road signs to tell you where you are. So anyone driving around that's new or not used to going in those back road areas, because I do 32nd Boyles. I didn't go into any of those other streets. I would take the asphalt roads. But it's easy to get lost if you're looking for something specific
And
without the road
in my
sign.
neighborhood, they actually put the sign backwards. So it says,
Oh, nice.
on San Joaquin, it says Terrace, and
Oh.
we're going up Terrace, it says San Joaquin.
It's still like that?
Yeah.
Hey, that's better than nothing.
That's better than- Well, I tell people I'm near the cross street of Terrace, and they're like, no, Terrace is this big, long street. What are you talking about?
I know where you live. I'll take a look.
But other than that, I think what's been happening, what is happening, and the future of the debt service, I think this is exactly what we asked for from Measure B. And I get it that there's caveats of how it can be spent, but we've talked about it. And I think the more we can up the standard of what a road looks like in Clearlake, I think the better off we're going to be, because that's the new standard we're going to start to meet for every single one of them. And right now, the amount of road work that's happened has been amazing.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when this stopped at the city limits over next cove over from me, then that kind of embarrassed the county to like, oh, we better do
What do you
something.
think got that done?
And so, yeah, it's like, oh, but now they came down Sulphur Bank, and now we're looking kind of shabby at the city
Yes.
line there.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, but you got a brand new asphalt versus double chip seal. I didn't quite get what I wanted, but
Okay, so Melissa, do we have anybody on the Zoom call that would like to talk, speak, or ask questions?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom.
Great, thank you. So shall we move on to decide our 22-23 budget? Take a look at what that might look like.
Yeah, I mean, this is, the only real difference here is the debt payment. You can see, I think at the time when Kelsey put this together, there was expectation to see $500,000 there for debt services, which for total annual payments 1.5. There was the expectation that there wasn't going to be, like it was an interest only payment or something. So we're actually going to have to adjust the transfers out. Transfers out is the amount that we transfer. We haven't been budgeting capital Measure B projects in the Measure B fund itself. You just take that money and move it into our capital projects funds and budget them from there. So, but those are the only real differences as far as salaries and all that stuff. It's consistent with previous years.
Okay, anyone have any questions or comments about that topic?
Do we have a plan for what's going to be done next year or the upcoming year?
Would that be
Well,
next project
we're
review?
working on that.
Yes.
If you want, well, it's actually another thing on the agenda.
That's the next agenda. Yeah.
I can show you a map.
Yeah.
I'll wait till we get there.
Right. Any hands raised on this topic or? Okay. Bruno has one.
Just a
It's right
quick-
next- It's too close.
it's almost there, and I know it hasn't really begun, but I'm hopeful that in the following years, kind of like how I see my bank statement for my mortgage, what I still have to pay off, what the interest is, that would be nice to see to come to Measure V, so we can make sure that we follow up and that we're slowly
Yeah,
reaching.
we can add that in.
Yeah, just because it's the money that we're supposed to oversee, it would be nice to have that. And I know it's not here because it hasn't really started yet.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Melissa?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, move right along then to the update on the Measure V projects review. Who would like to give us that update? Alan has a
Well,
map
I'll put the
overlay.
map up and then I can kind of give this quick overview and then Addie or Dave can talk about a little bit more details. So some of this we haven't updated. This was kind of, this blue stuff is areas to be done, but a lot of this includes what we actually did this year. Okay, so, but this is a section that was all done 2 years ago. So at the end of next year, like all of this blue stuff will be completed. And then this over here, we were talking about that earlier, that was done as part of this year. So there's kind of 3 main project areas that we're planning on using the debt financing for. This section here is south of Redbud Park, including just south of Mendo Mill. Section in here is really bad. The tree streets is all this stuff here south of Olympic. Redoing all that.
Is that slated for paving or chip seal?
Oh, we think with the drainage and stuff that's needed, it's gonna have to take
It's horrible. You can't. do
I
it.
can tell you that that was the first job I worked on, a sewer job. We tore that all up. There was asphalt on those streets when I first got here. Those streets were all paved. What they ended up doing was to basically cap the ditch and then overlay the streets completely again. The county chose to do that as an option to just ditch paving, patching the ditch where the sewer pipe went. So there was a road, there were roads there.
I'm glad you brought that up. Another thing to blame on the county.
Thanks, Ray.
So, and then this, we've added a few things to this, and Addie, you can speak to that, but basically all of Clearlake Park. And this would be a mix. I don't know that they've been working on driving all this and documenting, because some of these you'd probably do a chip seal or microsurface, and some of them need to be completely redone.
A lot of those roads are,
Some of them are good.
they're in good shape. The soil out there, I'm sure David will agree, is conducive to working with, as opposed to an area behind foods, et cetera, that's just the soil is awful.
Sandy over there,
Pardon me?
really sandy over there.
Yeah, this is all sand. I can tell you just as a curiosity, if you want it. What the county used to do years ago in the 70s is, before they were paved, is they'd have a grader come out after the first rain, and he'd start at one end of the subdivision and grade with the blade, grade every road all the way down, all the way out to Pomo. That's what they did once a year.
Addie, do you want to, any other updates on status or anything like that?
I want to say,
We won't do all of these next year, but you can talk about.
our plan is to finish up the areas where the chip seal hasn't been done yet, where there are houses. And then Ballpark, south of Ballpark, we plan on doing that with a couple of different surface treatments. We want to get to that area as well as the tree streets.
In the Bella Lagoon area.
Yes, in the next year, and then work towards this one since it's a bigger project after.
We'll be
those two are
working on
done.
design
Yes.
over the next
We
year.
actually have solicitation of proposal out to get design costs to begin this process now.
A couple of things I wanted to add, just for your information. This isn't Measure V funded, but funding that we received from the state that we were talking about earlier that did Lakeshore, that actually only ended up being, the project was a lot cheaper than we expected it to be. But the state already allocated us almost 14 million. So We're going to be doing the rest of Arrowhead, Burns Valley Road, all the way out to Olympic. And so that will be one project. And then the paving portion of Lakeshore Drive from out here all the way to Highway 53. So we are doing design work for the downtown right now. We hired a design team that's doing curb gutter sidewalks, all that stuff. And so we'll be identifying funding for that, those improvements. But this funding we will use to do the actual pavement portion.
So you say Lakeshore Drive, what part of Lakeshore Drive?
From here all the way to Highway 53.
I saw, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was a lot of money spent on a set of plans, a design for Lakeshore Drive. I remember a number in the $500,000 range for a design.
I'm not sure the exact number. There was a full set of plans,
Yes.
the sidewalks for Lakeshore Drive, actually Olympic and Old I-53 too.
And what
In
happened?
the 90s.
What happened to it?
Well, we have them. And so, I mean, there's a couple things related to that. One, it was a basic set of sidewalk stuff. What we're going to do is going to be a lot sexier than that. So we need trees, street lights, like the real downtown stuff, right? So we're taking it up a notch. We did give those to the consultant, and they're able to utilize some of it.
That's what I was getting at, is that even some of the city engineers that we've had in the past didn't realize that we had copies of all the sewer plot projects that were done in the late 60s and 70s and even the 80s that have some great information.
Yeah.
I go back and I refer to them all the
funded it back
time.
The redevelopment agency funded all those back in the day.
Yeah, but they're very useful for where structures were, where water lines are, where they're. So the design for Lakeshore Drive, they should be able to, that would take a big chunk of the cost out of new
Yeah.
design.
Unfortunately, it wasn't as much as I was hoping, but it did make an impact, yeah.
So I'm getting in the weeds. I know it's probably not Measure B oversight stuff, but, and I don't know if it makes a difference, and it's also kind of awkward because I don't like it. But in the county, we have maintained roads and unmaintained roads. It kind of hurts to even say that. But I'm looking at your area between Acacia and Park, where you have roads. They're true roads, but they're never, at least in the next 5 to 10 years, possibly going to get maintained. Does it help you at all with liability, or to say we're not going to do these roads, so Measure B doesn't have to look at it, or anybody coming to the city saying, please do these roads? Is there a reason that maybe you want to put them in the unmaintained category? Does that help people who are maybe buying tax auction properties in the middle of nowhere to know that these are unmaintained roads? I don't know. It's in the same category as all your roads. And the reason I bring it up is you said we'll have done all the gravel streets. And I can't help but to the left of the picture, I can see that that street's not going to be done. But there's still some gravel roads in certain areas that.
Yeah, no, there are. I mean, and you know, I remember we talked about this when we asked the committee about the whole debt financing thing. Is there's still going to be lots of projects in the city, right? But we have learned that we get a ton of savings when we have a project that's all together, and you know, the mobilization is all right there, and there's just a lot of savings that way. And so we steered away from picking up all these little pieces, and we think that once these are done, we'll be getting more revenue that isn't needed for debt financing, and we'll be able to use those smaller projects like we have sort of pay as you go stuff. And so all the little projects over more, we're gonna need to keep doing all that type of stuff.
And if we get some of our own equipment as well, it's easy
Right.
to go mobilize and do a certain street.
Are you talking boxwood, oleander and such?
Yeah, those, you don't,
I don't know, are those public or private?
I don't know.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I was wondering.
That does screw us up a lot.
I mean, even in the avenues, in the lower numbers, Those are roads. but
Yeah, and there's trees and
I
bushes
might
in the
lose
way.
my truck out there if I try to use that as a
I
road.
think if you declare
you can
something
see-
that it's going to be unmaintained, it's a real red flag for taxpayers.
Oh, trust me, the taxpayers have already been red flagged out there.
I mean, you know,
Just a reminder that the microphones for the Zoom are on the.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can see all the red stuff on here is all private.
There you go, Bruno.
We have a hand.
Well, then the yellow roads are the boxwood and oleander. And those
Yeah, the
are,
ones out there are public.
yeah.
we do have a hand up raised, Melissa.
Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I have. This is Cheryl. I'm sorry I'm late coming in, but I do have a question for the group. And that is to understand better how we are dealing with the 5-year plan of the roads that are in really bad shape.
Is that the NCE thing?
Well, I mean, the pavement management plan is being updated. In fact, we got a draft of it this week.
Yes.
I'm sorry, are you hearing me now?
We heard you.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, did you get that I was asking about the 5-year plan for the really bad roads that were paved? How does that fit in? Are we looking at that as part of the overall plan? I'm sorry, I was a little late attending.
We're just not sure what you mean by the really bad road 5-year plan.
Which ones?
Are you talking
Well-
about the pavement index management plan?
Yep, that's what I'm talking about. And we've done a 5-year plan. And then we got into bundling, which is fine. I understand that. But I'm trying to understand if we're also including or looking at those very deteriorated roads.
The answer would be yes.
I mean, I think, there's actually a 10-year plan on the Measure V stuff. And it's going to be a little bit of a mix. Some of those projects are included in the debt financing stuff and some aren't. And so, like, for example, Rumsey Road was planned for next year on the 5-year plan. Because it's not in these projects, that's not going to happen. It's probably going to get pushed out another year or two before we get to that one. That's not like a really bad one, but it's just an example.
It angers a council member for you.
I mean, we have, look
If
at.
they're
Ridge
still
Road.
on the radar, that's what I guess I'm
Yes,
wanting to
yes,
be sure of.
Yes, we're not throwing out the plan. We're just adjusting it a little bit to
Okay,
hopefully make more of an impact quicker.
that's all right. I want more of an impact quicker too.
Awesome.
Great, everybody does.
Out of curiosity, if you can on the side, property taxes, what has the increase look like as you put in more pavement and do more double chips? It would be nice to see if that's helping at all.
This is something that Dirk's brought up a lot of times. I mean, it's just, I would love to be able to calculate that as well, but we've also been doing all these improvements over the last 3 years in a time where property tax and housing values have went up exponentially for other reasons. And so I just don't know how to separate it all out and be able to attribute what is related to
I mean,
road improvements.
yeah, I think it's, for example, when a lot of that blue gets taken care of, people are gonna look at those vacant lots and go like, okay, now I can visualize myself, putting a modular here or building a house here or doing something. And I think that maybe just by those permits, we can tell if people are gaining interest in a certain
What else would you,
area.
what else would you base valuation on besides existing sales? I mean, the assessor going around reassessing things? So you have to go off of
Well-
sales, right?
Well, I mean, there's a few other tools. I mean, people argue how accurate it is, but
And it's more out of curiosity. It doesn't need to be anything specific, just because I feel like the money spent from Measure V that goes into the roads turns into property tax revenue, which is a steady stream for you. just to see all of that, just to, maybe that's another talking point, because it's only been 5-6 years, but in 14, we're probably going to be here requesting to continue doing this rather than allowing the tax to sunset and completely go away, because maintenance is still a thing. And it's just a useful data point as to why we would like you to keep paying this extra sales tax, because here's how it's creating extra revenue streams for the city to be able to provide you athletic parks and things like that. I don't know.
I mean, to answer your question, here's one tool. This is Zillow. And, you know, it's based on more, it includes sales. They also have an algorithm that estimates what your house is valued in the
They
increase,
send
right?
me
So,
notices all the time, and I imagine, you know, it's gone down recently.
yeah,
They told me, but I would imagine they're basing that off existing sales.
Yeah.
What else, what other
well,
data would go
but
into the algorithm?
I don't know, but I mean, it's not just ones that have sold, it's also the cumulative impact on, you know, the increase in sales it's had on our houses, even though they haven't sold, right? That's my point. But I mean, you can see there's been, you go back to 2017, 2016, I mean, values have more than doubled in the city. Some of that I'm sure has to do with road projects and some of it doesn't.
I don't know. I would guess though that it would be more about sales than anything. Because, I mean, when you pave a road like out in the park, Clearlake Park area, with just that $7 or $8 million project, nobody's going back and reassessing the houses. So
No, but they're all still worth 25,000 more or something.
I know that
They're more
Family
desirable anyway.
a family member sold one out there before they even listed it. And they knew about this. They knew about the pavement. So, yeah. Okay.
But sorry, in the weeds.
Was there any other hands raised on this topic?
There are no further hands raised.
Okay, then. We'll move on to the next item, number 5, adoption of resolution number OC 2022-01, a resolution of the Measure B Oversight Committee of the City of Clearlake declaring compliance with section 3-7.14 of the ordinance number 189-2016. Recommended action, adopt the resolution and recommend review by City Council.
I could not adopt something I have not seen. I'm sure it'll pop up soon.
Yeah, but or do I need to?
You have to pass it to him.
Maybe we should take a short break.
Okay. All right, let's take a 5-minute break. It's 4 o'clock. We'll come back at 4:05.
Sounds good to me.
Copy of our resolution in front of us.
These volumes on.
Anybody have any questions?
We feel the voters are getting what they voted for. How I do.
Actually, they're getting more than $1 million a year, more than what they
Well, yeah,
thought they were.
you're getting close to
getting
3
before.
million now.
Yeah.
And that means Measure P is doing amazing.
Wow.
too.
Does anyone have any questions, or shall we have Melissa call the roll?
I make a motion to approve this resolution.
Second.
Jim seconds. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
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 Oh, hi Cheryl. So Melissa, is that good enough, or do you need to call the roll?
Since Cheryl's on Zoom, you should call her.
That's right.
Perhaps we could put the resolution up on share screen so Cheryl can.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Cheryl.
Fire needs to see it.
Okay. Member Scholes,
All right.
Member Sabatier,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Member Almond,
Aye.
Chair Colburn.
Aye. Okay, that passed unanimously. Do we have any city manager or board member reports? Pretty much said it all.
Yeah. I ruined my voice telling you all I have. So.
Okay, and any future agenda items anybody would like to bring up for future agendas? Any items from the public, Melissa?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess we didn't actually call the roll at the beginning, so should we do that now for the record? Or we did it with
I
the
was able
resolution?
to take roll at the very beginning and noted that Member Almond arrived at 3:45.
Okay,
So I'll
great.
reflect that in the minutes.
So that's good. Okay. All right, good. Well, with that, we have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Meeting
Awesome.
adjourned.
Thank you.
See you all. Thank you very much. Have a great day.